All right, Scott Green, welcome to the 152 show. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, man. Happy to be on the show with you today.
Absolutely. So I've heard a lot about you, but there's a lot that I also don't know and that I'm interested about. So I
Let's
guess
do it. Yeah. Oh,
I guess we'll just start with tell me where you're from and
yeah,
how did you start with wrestling? Tell me about your upbringing with wrestling and all that.
sure. So I'm from Buffalo, Section 6 guy. Growing up,
Okay.
wrestled in the 80s and 90s. Obviously a very, very different landscape than what we have now, or
Hmm.
when I first got into coaching. But just kind of fell in love with it. My dad was a wrestler. Wrestled on a pretty good team for the local area.
Okay.
And went on and competed at the Division III level at Binghamton University back when it was a Division III program. So didn't have I always say like the only thing that was worse than my high school career was my college career. It wasn't anything like distinguished or anything like that. Uh,
Okay.
but I really kind of fell in love with coaching pretty early on. My high school coach kind of says, that I was coaching the high school team when I was in high school. So something that
Okay.
I always kind of had an aptitude for, but a passion for. And really, since my junior year at Binghamton, I kind of medically retired, mostly because I wasn't very good. But
Okay.
got right into high school coaching at that point in time, as a
Hmm.
junior, 21 years old. And I've been coaching ever since. So next year, probably 37th year in the business.
Wow, 37 years in a business, man. That's a long time.
Yeah.
And I
Yep.
always say,
No, for
listen, just
sure.
just
Yep.
because just because somebody wasn't a great competitor doesn't mean that they can't be a great coach. There's been so many people
Yeah.
who didn't have the spectacular careers, but they end up being
Yep.
spectacular coaches. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you're living proof of that right here. So,
I think wrestling is one of the only sports where that's out of the norm. A lot of other sports, you got head coaches, and sure, you've got some guys who are Pro Bowlers or all stars and things like that that are getting a good job done
mhm,
at the manager level. But a lot of times they're bit players, they're role players, they're guys who studied the game, who really can kind of break down the mental part of it. So they're not necessarily the star of the baseball team, the football team, the basketball team,
mhm.
whatever. But it's something that they've had a passion for, and maybe it didn't come easy for them, so they know how to teach it and work with kids a little bit better.
Absolutely. Actually, where I went to high school, so I went to Mepham High School, and
Yeah,
they call the godfather of New York wrestling is Sprit Gardner. And
yeah,
this is way back in the day. They they tell you the story as when you're on the team or whatever. So he never wrestled before. I think he was like a military
right.
guy, and he learned wrestling through a book, and then ended up becoming, Mepham was like back in that time like the program, like they say,
Hundred
Godfather of New York
percent. Yeah,
wrestling. So
those are the heyday of Long Island wrestling for sure back then.
yeah, bro.
It was 100%. That book's been floating around. There's a lot of guys from that era that have similar backgrounds. One of my first coaching jobs was a guy named Frank Storchinski at Union Endicott High School who had a very similar career to Gardner, who never wrestled before. But is one of the most revered and winningest coaches. So I got to cut my teeth when I was 22, 23 years old around him. And it really kind of
Mm,
motivated me to be a good coach. Yeah.
super dope. Okay, cool. So
Yep.
let's get into Shamrock Wrestling Club.
Sure.
Shamrock
Yeah.
Wrestling Club. So
Um,
I just want to say one thing. I can tell you that. So I grew up, I was a Garden City grappler, right? I don't know
yep.
if you remember that program, right? That was
I
run
do.
by
Yeah, for sure.
Coach Gillespie was, the
Hmm.
main guy, and Coach John
Right.
Massa.
Love
And
them both. Yeah.
I remember when we used to go upstate or to the state tournament, you see a Shamrock singlet, you knew it was about to be something serious. So I just wanted to say that before you got into what you about to say.
Yeah. So Binghamton area, probably mid 90s. Um, you didn't have organized super club, I guess I would say. We would go up in splinter groups and compete at like the Mohawk Valley Wrestling Festival, like some of the freestyle circuit that was
Hmm.
there at the time. And I just kind of saw an opportunity with some of the young guys that we had to build something along those lines. Club wrestling now is totally different. I'm sitting outside, New York Military Academy right now, and we're
Hmm.
having KD practice in there, and we're just talking about the same kind of stuff. And what KD's doing in the marketplace that he's in is completely different than what Shamrock was, right? Like we're training
Hmm.
in high school wrestling rooms. We're not charging. It's not my business. I'm still teaching school at that time. But we're combining resources and getting the best kids in the area together to
Hmm.
train 4 or 5 nights a week, and really kind of get ready for the bigger events that
Hmm.
that are important for high school wrestlers, right? So the formula was pretty simple once we got it going. Like the last folk style tournament of the year was the NISFA tournament, right? And then you're
Hmm.
in the room the next day and you're training
Hmm.
freestyle. We lost a little bit that kids started wanting to go to the NHSCA's, but primarily we were training for Fargo from the time the kids came back from Syracuse, or Albany or wherever it was at the time.
Hmm.
And we were taking it seriously, and we were going and getting the reps that you needed, and teaching kids how to wrestle the international styles. And that's where we really kind of made our fame, was by getting kids on the podium in Fargo when New York was having a hard time doing that. And so kind of became your success breeds more success. So
Yeah.
once we had a couple guys break through, then that next group of guys that came through, they just assumed that when they went out to Fargo, they were going to place,
Mm.
guys do it beforehand. So it was a great run, really, really kind of successful. Had a lot of kids accomplish some really, really good things, and that's the beginning of when you start getting on world teams too. So we started putting guys on teams at the time,
Mm.
and a really great era. Even like everyone knows the names like Dake and Nickerson, O'Connor, like the
Hmm.
headliners, Donnie Vincent, guys like that. But that next line of guys were having success in Fargo, and it was open opportunities for them in the Division One world too, even if they weren't that headliner like Kyle or JP or Troy were.
Okay. And what years was this? Like when did this start around, would you say?
Yeah, 96, I would say.
Oh, wow.
Think, yeah, 90, 95, 96, and then ran that pretty hard, with a lot of success until I went to Wyoming Seminary. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So I actually experienced the tail end of that. Well, I wouldn't say the tail
Yep.
end, but so because I was wrestling in the kid states around, let me see, when I was a freshman 2010, 2011. So maybe I was in the kid states at like 2007, 2008. So that was
Yep.
already, you
Yeah.
had already been doing this for, with Shamrock Wrestling Club for
Yeah.
about 10 years already at that
Yeah. That
point.
sounds about right. Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Yeah, I
And
remember
that's
that,
probably
man.
where it's at its peak, right? That's probably where we've got, in the beginning, we've got a solid group of 20, 25 kids training every day. At this point, when
Mhm.
you're around, that's probably closer to 50, 60 kids at 2 or 3 different sites. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
was about to say because it was very, every kid's bracket you would see Shamrock, that was just, when you thought
Yeah.
of when you thought
Yep.
of upstate, at least, when I was coming up, it was Shamrock and I remember the Johnson City a lot. Those were the two like
Yep. Sure.
names
Yep.
you would see on the bracket. And I'm sure a lot of the Johnson City people were going to Shamrock as well. So
Sure. Yep.
so
Yep.
those are like the
100%.
two
Yep.
two two things that I remember. So okay, so that's super dope, man. So I think it's good to transition. So you said you ran that all the way until you went to Wyoming Seminary. So
Yep.
now we could get
Mhm.
into the Wyoming Seminary arc of of
Yeah.
of
Sure.
of your career and what you had going on. Because now I have a couple of things I'm interested in as well, but I'll let you go first.
Yeah, and that's like an 11-year run there at Sem, and it's just one of those opportunities that actually happened because of Shamrock, because Sem's a pretty good program before that, and their
Mhm.
coach reaches out to me, and Sem is about an hour from Binghamton, right? It's in the northern part
Of
of
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. So John Gordon, the coach at the time, he's bringing his son and a couple other kids up to Shamrock to train with our guys.
Okay.
So we were talking about these guys like a Mike McMullen, and Nicky Gordon, and Adam Healy, like guys like that,
Okay.
are coming up and training. And John pulls me aside one day and he's like, "Hey, look, like, just letting you know, I don't know if this is anything you'd ever consider, but I'm leaving. Wyoming Seminary next year. My son's graduating, kind of taking a job at a prep school down in Virginia. It's like, would you be interested in coaching there? And I'm coaching at Binghamton at the time with Pat and Dennis, and running the
Mhm.
club. So things are going good there. But the wheels started kind of clicking and turning, and for the second, for the first time in my career, I leave a Division I job to go to a high school job, right?
Mhm.
Because I thought, man, like this is what I want to do. Like I can
Mhm.
recruit the
Mhm.
country. I can get back in the classroom. My biological kids can go there for free. So yeah, I just kind of talked to Pat, talked to the guys on the Binghamton team, and a couple of months later, I'm
Pull the
I'm I'm
trigger.
coaching at one seminary. Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
was your first year
Yep.
there at Wyoming Sem? What year was that? First year?
2010 maybe.
2010.
Maybe
Okay.
yeah, something like that. Yeah,
Okay.
29,
So
something
that
like that. Something.
okay. So that makes sense. All right. So now
Yeah.
this is what I'm curious about. So Wyoming Seminary used to go to the Eastern States, right?
Yeah.
I remember what was the first? So I went to the Eastern States in 2011, 2013, and 2014. And I
Yeah.
remember you guys were at least I know you were there in 2012, dominated the
Yep.
tournament in 2012.
Yeah.
What were the years that Wyoming Seminary was going to the Eastern States?
That sounds about right. Like I think there were a couple years where we had like a conflict, or we had like depending on the way the weekend that the Eastern States was once, like if it conflicted with the Blair duel,
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
didn't go, or we sent other guys and things like that. But we tried
Like
to
a B
make it a
team.
regular kind of appearance
Uh-huh,
there.
uh-huh.
So I mean, but we got such good competition there. I mean, you're talking about Yanni wrestling, Jack Mueller. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
it was like one of those things where, I felt a it wasn't the Beast of the East or the Iron Man, but it was a good opportunity for my guys who might not place at those tournaments
Hmm.
to go run a really really good event for them where they could
Hmm.
beat a good New York kid. But for a guy like Jack Mueller, Nick Greenan, like guys like that who were number one ish guys in the country, we knew we'd
They were
get
running
tested
through it.
by the best New York kids too. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
they
but I
were
mean
running.
no, I mean sometimes yes, sometimes no. Like there were guys like Yanni. There were landmines there that you wanted to kind of get across from,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
compete
yeah.
against. So
Hmm.
sometimes, yeah, it was a pretty dominant performance, but we dropped a lot of matches to good New York kids, and I felt like that was good for everybody because it gave them an opportunity because New York rules aren't particularly conducive to wrestling. It gave them an opportunity at a national level guy. So yeah,
Absolutely. So, okay, so basically, I don't know if you've seen, but something that I've been very vocal about on my platform and on my page is I feel like the Eastern States should be a bigger tournament than what it is. I think that I think that the Eastern States is we're basically content with the draw being D1 versus D2, right? I feel
yep,
like that's the headline of the Eastern States tournament. And I always felt like it never made sense because number one, the name of the tournament is Eastern States, so it's not even really Eastern States. It's 95% New York with a couple of New England teams. Wyoming Seminary used to come a little bit. A couple of Virginia teams here and there, but I always felt like you know it should be growing into a bigger tournament, or at least my ego, me being a New York guy, I would want it to be something like a Powerade, like a Beast of the East, like and something to that level. But I just feel like you said, the rules, whatever it is, something is holding it back from being bigger than what it should be, in my opinion. And I
I'm with
always
you.
said, Wyoming Seminary used to come, but they don't come no more. And I even said it. I used to, and this is even me without even talking to you, but just me using common sense. I'm like, it probably stopped even being worth it for Wyoming Seminary to come. Like that was just my mind.
Uh,
And this is me speaking without speaking to you, but that was just what I'm saying. I'm
yeah,
like, Clovis West came and they stopped coming. Wyoming
yeah.
Seminary was coming. Now they ain't coming no more. So I don't know. I just that's
Here's a
where I
couple
was at.
things. I was coaching high school at Oxford, the first Eastern State tournament when it was at Orange Community College here, and that was the original vision, right? So we were
Mhm.
wrestling like JP was wrestling a kid from Manalapan, New Jersey, and Tyrone, Pennsylvania. There was a good kind of representation of
Yes.
schools. I think what happened, and I can tell you at Wyoming Seminary, my friends in the coaching game that I've known for years were happy to see
Hmm.
me, but a lot of the better New York teams were like against us being there. They didn't like it. And here's what I think is the reason, and I can't prove this, and I don't know for sure. But I think it's become so important for people to protect their win and loss rest because of the wild card system and
Hmm.
and prestige points and wrestle that are state place winners in New York, and try to figure all that stuff out to get their kids to the state tournament, that they don't want to see an out of state team with good kids show up,
Hmm.
they just it doesn't benefit them. And I think there's a lot of high school coaches in public schools in the NISFA kind of system that they see their main goal as to get their kids to the state tournament and get in and place there,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, and they don't see their main goal as getting their kids college looks or getting them to, wrestle against national level guys.
Yep.
And I get that, but I think that mindset holds back New York public school wrestling. And I think it holds
Absolutely.
back I think
Absolutely.
it holds back the progression of the Eastern States tournament. Maybe
Yep.
you could say if they didn't have to worry about all that stuff and making sure they got that third wild card or whatever, that they'd be willing to go out there and scrap with the better teams. But I think right now, I mean, I can tell you right now, like Jeff Kilty called me every year and he's like, "Hey man, like these schools don't really want you here," and he would tell me who they were, and I'd be like, "But they're pretty good." He's like, "Yeah, but they don't want to wrestle you guys. They just say it doesn't make sense." And I'm like, all right, are we still invited? And he's like, oh yeah, of course, but I'm just telling you, these guys are kind of salty that you're bringing your team. And I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, what are you going to do?
I mean, see, and that's what bothers me a lot is, I think that mentality is what's holding back New York wrestling
Yeah.
from being better than what it could be. And this is, more stuff that I've been very vocal on. And we border two of the best wrestling states in the country, Pennsylvania
Yep.
and New Jersey. There's no reason why,
Sure.
in my opinion, we should not be on that level. I mean, we have a bigger population, than these two states. It's a culture thing, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a rule thing. You know what I mean? It's just Eastern states. Why are we not inviting teams from Pennsylvania and New Jersey, even if they're not the top teams, right? But even just solid public, like for example, like the equivalent of a Long Beach or the equivalent of a Minnesota Valley in Pennsylvania, New Jersey. If
Yeah.
you invite them to New York, they're guys who
Mm-hmm.
aren't even state qualifiers are going to come to the Eastern states and do some damage because they're that good.
Absolutely.
And
And
I
I
just
think
don't
that's why you're not
understand
doing
why
it.
we're
I,
not
I,
doing
I
that.
think that's why they're not doing it, is because you don't get a favorable point ranking or whatever they use to determine the wild cards of losing
Mm,
to a non TA state place winner. It's
mm,
all those kind of things. But I mean, like there's a lot of reasons why New York public school lags behind. It's not even there's less private school opportunities in New York. If you look at Jersey and PA, a lot of those powerhouses are kids who are in private schools where they're attracting the talent from a little bigger radius, and the club scene is different in those states too.
mm.
There's a lot more club opportunities in Jersey and Pennsylvania than there are in New York.
Okay. So now I've been asking, a lot of people this question, people who have a lot of experience coaching, right? I don't know the ins and outs. I'm talking strictly from a passion side. You know what I mean? That's my me. I was just a wrestler in New York, a successful wrestler in New York. Obviously I know
Yeah,
some things, but I don't know the ins and outs of, the politics and the,
sure.
rules and coaching. And, someone like you would have a lot more knowledge on those things compared to me. So I ask you this: what are some things that I know you're not involved, you're not a public school coach in New York, but what are some things that you would like to see change that you think that could better public schools in New York, the level, and make us, just improve the quality of wrestling here?
Yeah, I think that being willing to look at competition as a good thing uh,
Okay.
is important. It needs a lot of them. And there's some great public school coaches. Don't get me wrong. I'm
Hmm.
not trying to lump everybody in the same group. There's guys who've
Of
been doing
course
it for
not.
years that do a tremendous job. But having more high school coaches involved in the off season, that want to coach their kids all year round, having less kind of fear of a school like ours or what St. Francis has going on up in, in,
Yeah.
in Section 6.
Oh yeah.
Instead
Oh
of just
yeah.
kind of holding your breath and kind of shaking your fists at the gods that there's private schools in the area, why not collaborate with them? Yeah, I mean, some of your kids are going to go there, but that's been happening in New Jersey and Pennsylvania um, for 40 years, and they're still pretty good public high schools. Like Northampton still got a really good team, even though they've
Hmm.
got Notre Dame and Bethlehem Catholic right there, fishing in
Hmm.
the same pond. But a rising tide lifts all boats, and I don't think there's uh, a willingness to see it that way. I think there's a fear of some public school programs of their kids going to a club.
Yeah.
And I think there's a fear of, hey, if my kid goes up to KD, we have practice going on right now at
Hmm.
NYMA. Man, they're going to try to poach them. So I'm telling my kids not to go there, and I'm like,
Hmm.
okay,
Hmm.
that's cool. I understand that. But what are you doing right now? You know,
Hmm.
what are you doing to
Hmm.
get your kid better? And
There
it's
you
if he's
go.
not doing it, then they're going to find a place where they know that there's coaches that are invested in them and want to go. So there's 40 kids in the room right now.
Hmm.
And they're just being provided with great opportunities. So like if I'm a coach in this area and I'm looking in there now and my kid's in there, he's working out with Ryan Jack and Tommy Askey,
Hmm.
and Jaden James and Will Soto and all those guys. I'm pretty happy about it, but I
Oh
don't know if
yeah.
that's the mindset right now. I don't know if that's the mindset right now.
And now, do you think that's because of certain rules that are set up in New York? Are there rules that you think would are also holding us back here? Certain, you know.
Maybe. I don't know enough about. I don't think there's anything restricting coaches from running clubs or working with wrestlers in the off season.
Well, I'm talking
And
about
and it
like in
doesn't.
season rules, like the way our, for
Oh,
example, our state tournament is set up, or
yes,
the our
yes,
point system. And that's what I'm saying. Like, are there any rules there that you believe are holding us back, that or things
hundred
that you would
percent.
like to see changed? Could you get
Yeah,
into that
hundred
some
percent.
stuff?
Yeah, I think that definitely is an issue, right? There's been issues since the split with that kind of thing. I think back in the day, man, like if you didn't like JP
Were
O'Connor
you a
lost to
fan of
Troy
the
Nickerson.
split? Were you a fan of the
No,
split? So you're
no,
you're against the
no.
the two divisions.
Yep. hmm
Okay, good.
But JP lost to Troy Nickerson in the Section 4 finals, and he didn't get to go to the state tournament when he was in seventh grade,
Mm-hmm.
right? So think about
Yeah.
that. So he knew what his spring and summer pathway looked like just to get to the state tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I'm a high school coach and I'm coaching and I know the top four kids and the top three kids in my section go, I can open the room a couple times, have them go to NHSCA's and be an All-American there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, I'm good. I don't have to train
Yeah.
them that hard because they're probably going to the state tournament anyway. So I
Got
think
you.
it's become watered down a little bit. Uh,
Absolutely.
it was bad before. I would be a fan of one state title, but multiple place winners from each section go. You know,
Yeah.
but I think the split is making it easier for coaches to say, "Hey, I'm doing my job. I'm getting kids to the state tournament," and maybe that's
Mm-hmm.
their job. I'm not here to say you have to, produce national level kids. But I also don't think you should cast a side eye at people who are trying to do that and
Mm-hmm.
sabotage or prevent your kids from taking advantage of the opportunities that they can take advantage of.
100%. So I'm a huge I am completely against the two divisions. I
Yeah,
nobody can give me one reason that it makes sense to me. I am completely 100% against it. Um, there's so many examples as to why I'm against it. And people tell me all the time, hey Lou, stop talking about it because it's never gonna change. Right. That's what people always tell me,
Yeah.
right? They go in the comments.
Yep.
But I tell them, I say, yeah, with that mind state right there is why it will never change. If there's a bunch of people who are fighting like me, who are being vocal about it and saying, hey, we don't like this, let's bring it back to the way it was,
Right.
maybe there could be a change. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
I think that people need to not be closed-minded and speak up for what's right. Because
Yeah.
in my opinion, I want New York to be the highest level of competition that it could possibly be. And to me, how do
Yeah.
you determine what is quality or what is high level? In my opinion, it's determined by a couple of things. Number one is nationally ranked wrestlers in high school, right? How many
Yep.
nationally ranked wrestlers does your state have? Right now, a state like Pennsylvania and New Jersey, the two states that border us, have multiple kids in every single weight class. Right now, when you
Sure.
look at New York, we have we don't even have one in every weight class, right? We might have,
Right.
a couple here, then we skip a couple weight classes, then we get one, and so it's not as
Yes.
deep as the states that border us. And
Yeah.
I go by statistics, right? When you look at, I'll just talk about when I was in high school, right? 2014, right? We had at least one kid for every weight class. And I'm sure that
Yeah.
2014 wasn't even as strong as 2001 and 2000, when the split was happening,
Sure.
right before the
Yeah.
split. A lot of people, when I started doing these lists, the, top 15 and all that, people are saying that that was the golden era of New York,
Yes.
right? Because you
Mm-hmm.
look at it, a lot of the guys from that era were going Division 1, NCAA Division 1, and they're transitioning. They're doing very well in Division 1, becoming All Americans and national champions. And that's the
Yeah.
also this
Kyle Dake, Troy Nickerson, JP O'Connor, all Americans as true freshmen
exactly all from Section 4.
from Shamrock.
Oh, from
Yeah.
Shamrock. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, let them know. Talk. Let them know. All from
No, no,
Shamrock
no, no,
Section
no.
Four.
But it's like if you don't think that your job or the purpose of a public school, if people disagree with you, right, and they say that's not what high school wrestling is all about, I respect that. If they're like, oh, I'm trying to get the best team that I can so we can go to the state duels, that's a big deal for our town. I respect that. People can disagree with what
I
you're
I,
saying.
I
I
respect
don't.
it
I
too.
don't. But I respect that. But also, get out of my way. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, for real.
don't hold back your kids. Don't be shocked, when a kid is like, I love you, coach. I think what you're doing is great, but I want something a little bit different. So I'm going to go check out New York Military Academy or St. Francis or another
Mm-hmm.
school that does that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I get your philosophy. I don't disagree with you, but that's not what I'm in this for. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or, don't like tell your kids, don't go here. Just do what you want to do and get what you want out of it, because I respect that. I think it's awesome when a small town team gets to the state tournament and pulls off an upset or something like that, or if a kid stays at his home school and goes and wins state tournament. Awesome moments, awesome things. High school
Mm-hmm.
wrestling is
Mm-hmm.
about that too. But at the same time, don't be shocked when there's people who are like, "Hey, I want a little more about that. I'm going to go to New York Military Academy because I think that's better fit for my family."
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, you know, I feel like the way you grow the sport is through excitement, in my opinion, right?
Yeah,
What attracts people to anything is a movement, this an energy and awe, right? So if
yeah,
New York, and this is another reason why I'm such an advocate for something like one division, is we don't get a lot of those electric moments nowadays in the state tournament, right? We don't have, in a lot of the weight classes, you already know who the person is that's going to win that weight before the tournament even starts. Obviously, things happen right here and there, but for the most part, if there's a guy who's a nationally ranked guy, he's pretty much a shoo-in, right? Now, that's not the case in the quality states. And I feel like when we have to compare ourselves, why people say, oh, but there's states that have this, there's states that have that. Why don't we compare ourselves to who's the best, right? Let's compare ourselves to Pennsylvania, to New Jersey, to California, to Ohio. And then they tell me, oh, but Ohio has 3 divisions. Oh, but I'm like, but we're not even in the same stratosphere as Ohio. They can afford to have three divisions. New York, right, is not a state to me that can afford to keep splitting things up. We need to accumulate everything that we have. Ohio can, California can handle that, but we can't. We're not in the same level as them. That's how I see
And
it.
that's why I think, and it's a shame in some ways, but it's also it's good for me
Yeah.
that people want to come to St. Francis is different than us, right? And some other schools that have kind of built up in the NISFA thing, but our kids are going to go and compete at the national preps at the end of the year, which
Yes.
is one championship. There's not two divisions or three divisions of national preps. So for a kid who comes here, it's the exact opposite of what you're saying, right? It's the scenario where if you're going to come here, you're going to have to beat the kid from Blair, the kid from Wyoming Seminary, the kid from Malvern Prep, the kid from Lake Island Prep to win a
And done.
title, right?
Yeah.
All of the above. So, like, that's why. I mean, I don't want to say my job's going to be easy, but that's why we're having some success because kids are seeing what you're seeing. They're like, hey, if I stay in New York, maybe I got one tough match at the state tournament. I can't really do much. I'm losing ground during the high school folk style season. If I
No
go there,
opportunity to get a national ranking in New York during the season, by the way.
yeah. If I
No.
go there, rankings aside, I might take 5 or 6 losses, but I know in February I'm going to be better than I was if I had stayed.
Absolutely.
And so I'm going to sacrifice that chance at a state title to go and get some blood on me on that
Hmm.
schedule,
Hmm.
and maybe I place fifth at national preps, but I know. Who the schools that I'm looking at, I know what they value more.
Yeah.
A couple state titles or really kind of developing in a
Going
room in
through
a
the
program
grinder.
that has a proven record of it. And you
Absolutely.
don't want to grind them too much, but at the same time, you want to prepare them. College preparatory in every aspect. So
Hmm.
yeah,
And also, I want to reiterate real fast. It's not really about the ranking when I say national ranking. What I really mean is that
yeah,
there's no chance to like prove yourself nationally in a New York season. That's basically what I'm trying to say is that,
I
you don't
agree.
really
Yeah,
meet
no,
too
I
many
know.
guys that they say, oh man, he beat this person. Now the nation is on notice. Now college coaches are on notice. You could go the
Right.
whole New York season, and I'll even, real quick, I'll use myself as example, right? My senior year, I was ranked number 4 in the country. I lost to the Ironman champion in the Super 32 in the quarterfinals. I didn't see
Yep.
any competition like that. I wrestled him in the Super 32, which is preseason. He's from Ohio. So now he goes and he gets to wrestle in the Ironman. He gets to go wrestle nationally during the season. And now me, I go back to New York, right? And I don't get to see the
Yep.
same competition. So now
Right.
he's staying at that Super 32 level during the season. And then me, I'm going back to New York. And back home in New
Right.
York, I'm not seeing competition until the Eastern States. That's the only
Sure.
test I get. Then
Yeah.
again, I don't even see it again until the state tournament. So it's
Yeah.
just that's the problem. So I think this is a good segue to get into talk about, you know, where you're at now, New York Military Academy. I mean, you've had so many people committing. It's been like bang, 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 rapid fire. I mean, let the people know what's going on and reiterate is why do you think so many people are attracted to go there?
Well, we've got two things going on in two different directions. One of them is the postgraduate program here. So that is where a lot of these commitments are coming from. We got some kids coming up from the island and the city that for the exact reasons that you are talking about are trying to find another opportunity. They don't have the college looks and offers that they want. So
Mm-hmm.
they're going to come here. They're going to train in our room. They're going to wrestle a hybrid of national prep and college open schedule. And my
Mm-hmm.
job, which I'm confident that I'll deliver on, is when that's over, they're going to have a better look at the college scene. They're going to have more reps in front of college coaches, and they're going to have more
Mm-hmm.
interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a postgraduate year can provide that and when I was at Wyoming Seminary, I got a lot of postgraduates from underdeveloped schools or underdeveloped states where they didn't have the exact same opportunities that you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and they want that extra year. So I anticipate that continuing here. Not just New York kids, but kids from all over the country will say, "Hey, not where I want to be. I'm going to roll the dice and bet on myself and go have a great PG year." for Coach Green, and
Mm-hmm.
he's going to help me, get to college. But then I think the other aspect of that is that's going to really start taking off is kids are going to transfer. Kids are going to say, I want that. I saw what happened at Wyoming Seminary. I saw the
Mm-hmm.
guys that competed there, and that's what I want for myself. So I'm going to
Uh-huh.
go there, and I also think we'll start getting like New Jersey, like Pennsylvania, the kids coming up through the middle school program that will never even go
Okay.
to New York public high school. I think that's going to happen with pretty regularity. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that that there's the proof of concept that it's already happened, and so like where in the past when that stud kid would go to Blair, or I would steal him and bring him to Sem, um, and they
They're gonna
never
come to New
competed
York
at
now.
yeah, so they can stay closer. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And come here. So I think that's the goal for us, and I think
Mm-hmm.
there's some really good opportunities for kids around the country, but in particular New York kids too. Yeah. So that's
Absolutely.
kind of how we're laying it out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, you've had some, some big commits.
Yep.
Like I said, it's been popping up on my social media feed. Like I said, it's like
Yeah.
bang, 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 rapid fire. I'm like, man, these
Hmm.
these people are on fire. And I can tell you this, hypothetically speaking, you know, if someone like you would have came to me my senior year and explained to me, hey, listen, this is
Yeah.
what we got going on, right? You know, you have so much potential, right? You're in the national eyes. Why don't you come over here and listen? You're going to be able to wrestle at Powerade or Beast of the East, or I'm not sure what you guys' schedule is, but you're going to get
Yeah.
national level
Yeah.
competition. You're going to go to the prep nationals at the end of the year, which you're guaranteed to wrestle, national level guys. I would have highly considered it. You know what I mean? I would have
Mhm.
been like, yo, like that sounds a lot better than my public school season because like I said before, New York is just not cutting it. They're not up to par. So,
Yep.
like you said, get
You
out.
would have been perfect recruit,
Yeah,
100%.
I would have loved it.
Yeah.
I would have been like, yo, this is not me. And like you said before, get out of your way, right?
Yeah.
If you
Kids
don't like
outgrow
it,
their
then get better.
programs.
Get better.
Yeah,
Do what you're
kids
doing.
outgrow their programs, and those are the kids that we made a lot of progress with at Wyoming Seminary. And the same thing will start happening here is they just outgrow their program, and that's nobody's fault. It's just a product of what's happening. So we had a lot of kids who would come for their junior and senior year, but just remember, like New Jersey, Pennsylvania, there's a lot of kids that never wrestle for a public school. They're figuring out in seventh or eighth grade which private school they're going to, you know?
Mhm.
Um, so I think, in a year or so, every kid that is at a high level in all of New York State will at least have to consider coming here to wrestle. It won't
Absolutely.
be a good fit for everybody. It won't be what every kid and what every family wants. But if you want to achieve your goals, and you're considering, wrestling at the Division I level, you have to at least consider it. You have to have that conversation with yourself and say,
Mhm.
is this what I want to do? Because that's how it was. Like every good kid that was like, oh, should I go to Blair? And there's great middle schoolers from Long Island going to Blair next year.
Mhm.
Um, and every kid was like, hey man, like Pennsylvania, do I stay here and wrestle for my public school, or do I look at SEM? And there's great, middle school kids from Pennsylvania that are going to SEM next year. So I
Mhm.
think that this is the kind of same level that we're trying to establish here is like, if you're serious about your goals and you want it
Mhm.
to be somewhere where they kind of like a proven program that's going to get you there, you gotta.
Unfortunately, we got cut off. I did not see the timer. Usually the timer pops up on the side. I didn't see it this time. So we got cut off. But listen, I think there was a lot of gold there. Great conversation with Scott Green, New York legend, legendary coach, 152 show.